Welcome to episode 126 of thenecronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now. And this movie blows my mind, and I can't wait for this discussion today. Normally, I would make a joke and then make fun of my co-host, but he's not here today. He's living it up in Salt Lake at FanX, hopefully selling a ton of books and having a great time. So in his place, we have our guest co-host today. Laurel Hightower is back on the show. Laurel, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me crash.
Do you want to give our listeners a quick who you are?
Oh yeah, I'll do the same version you guys do. I'm Laurel Hightower, horror writer, bourbon drinker, and toddler chaser.
I love it. All right, cool. So we have director Natasha Kermani is here today. Natasha, thank you for being here as well.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
I kind of told you this a little bit before we went on, but I'm not a person who normally rewatches films. If I rewatch it, it's several years before I watch it again. And I've watched this, I think, 3.5 times now because I feel like one of those times was just going through looking for things in the background. And I love this movie. I'm so excited to be talking about this today. So
that's awesome. Yeah, thank you. I will try to answer all of your questions to the best of my ability, but there's a lot in there, so there's certainly a lot to talk about.
Oh yeah. Do you want to tell our listeners a bit about yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Natasha. I am a filmmaker originally from New York and now living it up, living my best LA life. And yeah, my most recent film is Lucky, which of course, did the festival circuit in 2020, which was a very strange time for all of us. And I'm just really excited that we got a chance to, get the movie out there, and it's now streaming on Shudder. So anybody with Shudder, you can check it out. It's also streaming on VOD and I believe available for disc purchase as well.
Awesome. Very cool. I also saw your film Imitation Girl, and yes. I loved that as well. So
yes, my first child is Imitation Girl, which is a very small little sort of dreamy science fiction movie that I'm very proud of, and is your you'll never forget your first film, right? That's sort of like your first child into the world. So yeah. Thanks for mentioning.
Very cool.
Where's that available to see?
Imitation Girl is available, I believe, on Amazon Prime. And I think you can also find it on some other VOD platforms and Blu-ray.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. All right, so let's jump in because I know you're probably strapped for time like always. And, we got a lot to talk about today. So, Laurel, I'm just going to open it to you because I know you have way more notes than I do.
Well, I do have a lot of notes, and I'm glad I just went back and watched it again this week too, because the first time I watched it, I spent most of it with my mouth open and going, yeah, oh my God, yeah. So, one of the things that, and I've been recommending it to a lot of people, and before I watched it though, I had seen some of the reaction from some men has been that they don't know what's scary about it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, I'm almost just kind of like, yeah, okay, so you can suspend reality, to believe, to be scared by a zombie movie or a ghost movie or a vampire movie, but you can't relate to what is literally
right.
fine. So I was kind of interested to know just how this came about, because it seems like the most intricately, beautifully put together puzzle that I've ever seen. So I'm just interested how it came.
Yeah, I think it is a puzzle in a lot of ways. We sort of, for me from the beginning, it was this idea of moving through the looking glass, right? So it's a mirror of our own reality. Like you said, it is incredibly grounded and ultimately a metaphor for a real life. But we're sort of telling the story through this really heightened expressionistic world that gets increasingly more bizarre. So it's sort of like we're going into bizarro land. And I think, for me, it just the script felt like a real challenge. So the script came to me through the writer, Brea Grant, who also plays the lead role. And I was familiar with her and her work. We knew each other socially. We had never worked together. And I was looking at a lot of scripts that just weren't very exciting to me. They felt like a rehash of a rehash, or, just something I had seen before. And this felt like, again, just a massive challenge because, like you say, it really is a puzzle, right? It's like, how does all of this fit together? And how are you balancing these layers of text, subtext, visual metaphor, and then the actual overarching metaphor, which is we are looking at this bizarre, heightened world to look at a real life absurdity. And so for me, that was very exciting. I also love satire, and I love the idea of a horror satire that uses the skin of a slasher, or it uses the sort of like the toolkit of a slasher movie, but is in fact actually a piece of satire. It's not really a straight horror film. So all those things were really exciting to me. And I felt I could sort of take what Brea had put on the page and bring it to the next level. And that's really what you're looking for when you're looking at other people's writing. So that's where the conversation started and sort of took off from there.
I really like that the skin of a slasher. I think that's a great phrase for this.
Yes.
Go ahead, Laurel. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was just going to gush some more. I was just going to say that it just seems like it was a really, really effective partnership because, the other things that I noticed were just the just completely on point delivery that Brea gives with so much of this.
Mm-hmm.
And, you mentioned it being like a through the looking glass. I was kind of thinking of it while I was watching it today, almost as though it's like, if you had an alien come to Earth and you were trying to explain to them, the difference in being a woman and being a man, like how insane it would look to them.
That's
it's like
cool.
you just walk through this, and this is how your life is and this is how theirs is.
Yeah.
And she just, the delivery on that and all the actors, and actresses and in just all of the moments, it just seems all just very like.
We had such an awesome cast. It was I have to tell you guys, it was truly a lovely experience. And look, there's always hard times with any film, especially in indie. We didn't have enough money. We didn't have enough time. We didn't have this, that, and the other thing. But I think by proxy of the project itself being unique and interesting and the type of person who would be drawn to something this complex and ambitious, I think is somebody inherently who I would be excited to collaborate with. And so what we ended up with is this really kind of amazing, diverse team of people who were all brought together by this very ambitious, like putting this puzzle together, right? We were all like, this is fun, this is different, this is a challenge. And so I think that energy is something I was very grateful for. And I think, again, it all comes from that script that Brea wrote that has all of those elements. And then, the production designer says, oh, here's what I can bring. And, the makeup and all this different stuff. Everybody had their own, they had a lot to chew on, so to speak. And that's not always the case with a project, right? Sometimes you're just sort of going through the motions. And this was really the opposite. And it was great. It was a great experience.
And, as you say that, it never felt like a low budget film to me. Like how some films you can feel it, and there's nothing against that. Like Found is one of the most low budget films I've ever seen that still excited the hell out of me. So nothing against that at all. But I never felt like you didn't have a budget. What about you, Laurel? Did you?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I'm not as into film as James is as far as like knowing, that sort of thing or paying attention to what a budget, would be or anything, but it just all felt so, so perfectly crafted and it just seemed it's amazing to take a step back from it too and listen to what you're saying about, the whole team working on it, all of the cast and the production designer, and then, a lot of the score, all of that coming together and everyone working on it together. That's just, to have it just click together so perfectly like that. Cause I just feel like there's nothing wasted and there's nothing that is,
very lean. It was a very lean project. Yeah. Well, I like your use of the word crafted, because I think that is a really important aspect of filmmaking. And I think there is this sort of fantastical idea of filmmaking as this like very art forward, intuitive, you go with how you're feeling in the moment. And there is a degree of that, but ultimately we are craftsmen. And we are crafting it, and it's very intentional and it's very specific. And I think it's all about the intention going into it. And so it's great to hear that it felt not like a low budget movie to you, James, because that was important to us. We wanted it to feel like you were watching a movie, you were having a cinematic experience, because again, that's part of the whole ethos of it, right? Is like through looking through this quote unquote mirror. Of course, it's not a mirror, it's cinema. But like by having that that artifice of we are watching this experience, we're watching this movie, we were able to play a bit of a magic trick on the audience, right? So by the time you're in Act 3 and you realize, oh shit, this is about us. That was very intentional from the beginning. My goal was, people are maybe giggling a little bit and having a nice time and looking, ooh, what a pretty looking movie. And Bria's so beautiful. She's a movie star, blah, 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 blah. And then by the time you get to the third act and you're in that parking lot scene, the audience has sort of been hoodwinked into, oh, this is a mirror for our own world. So that is exactly crafted from the end, intentional from the beginning of the process.
And one of the things that I love about that, hopefully you haven't read as many of the comments as I have online.
Oh, I'm not on Twitter. I'm not on Facebook. I don't do any of that. I have a very peaceful Instagram. And that's it.
So wise.
I went deep diving because I knew what people would complain about, right? Like I knew they'd be like, oh, they beat it over the head. We get it. Women have it hard, blah, 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 blah. And what I love about this film is that you never back down. There's no sugarcoating. There's no tight ending that, oh, it took care of this one monster and he was the only one, Like I look at like The Invisible Man, great movie, but it solves the problem. It solves the problem.
Yeah.
And what I love about this is I don't know if the problem's solved. It's definitely not solved for everyone. I don't know if it's solved for her. I don't think it is.
She's trapped. Yeah, she's not really able to leave. Mm-hmm.
So, like, I love that a lot of these films are about not a happy ending necessarily, but there's a conclusive ending, and the horror is either over or it's explained or whatever. And this leaves it. It's never back down. It's that whole. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's part of the reason to do an indie, right? So we were talking earlier about, there's not enough time and not enough money. The trade-off is you can tell a story on your own terms, and perhaps I would suggest be a little bit more, you're a little bit looser and more free to tell, in my opinion, a more honest story, right? So there is no solution for the problem that is proposed by Bria's script, right? She wrote a really tough, challenging movie. It's about tough, challenging issues. And so, no, it's not wrapped up with a bow at the end. Whereas if, what you get with the struggle of not having enough time and money is the ability to have that more challenging ending. And I think that is one great thing about working in the independent space.
And I think that's why this movie speaks so highly to me. Not to spend too much time on myself here, but I spent many years as a case manager and working with abused women and human traffic victims and stuff like that.
Wow.
And listening to all of their stories and every conversation with lawyers and parole officers and whatever else. And so this speaks to me because it never ends. Like maybe one of our women came in and they made progress and they were able to move on with their life, but someone else always showed up, right? Like, even when I left, it didn't go away. Like, and so I think that's what speaks to me so highly about this is that we didn't just get rid of the problem.
No, that's incredible, and thank you for the work that you put in, because this is very difficult work, and I understand to a degree. I grew up. My father is an ER physician, and so I spent a lot of time in ERs and in these sort of really, again, challenging places where you're really confronted with these real problems that people face. And it's interesting that you responded well to the movie, because a lot of the lines that are played as being sort of dryly funny in the movie are pulled directly from things that police have said to people who worked on the film. And so a lot of those lines, like, you're kind of laughing, you're like, how that no cop would really say that. But, Bria and I had conversations. They all say it,
Yes.
You're so lucky, nothing worse. And in the whole point of the movie is to put that in this heightened context so we can re-examine these conversations and these moments that we have, and maybe look at these moments and these conversations with a more critical eye. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about the movie releasing and having conversations with people afterwards is, quite a few people sort of came up and they said, maybe it's a man who has a girlfriend or a wife and said, she came to me with this problem and I didn't know how to respond. And I saw myself in the other characters in the movie who were just sort of replying with niceties or pleasantries or trying to put the conversation to bed. So I think that honesty that Bria brought to the script, it does translate. And I think people who get the movie did really respond to that aspect. So that's cool. That's really cool to hear you say that.
Yeah, and go ahead.
I was just going to say, I love that it has sparked that conversation, because I feel like that, I don't know, I feel like with this, I'm married and I hope to always be, but if I ever had to date again, I would use this movie for profiling purposes. I'd be like, before I go out with you, I need you to watch this movie, then I need you to tell me what you learned and tell me what you think about it. Because, I just feel like if they didn't respond appropriately, I'd be like, okay, you're in the garbage next.
Bye. Yeah. It's a good Rorschach test.
Yes. Because that's the whole thing. Like, like James, what you were saying about, there not being a resolution, exactly, because normally, that's what happens. You kill the monster, you do the whatever, and you come out from the darkness. And in a horror movie, so much of that is the goal. You get out of whatever situation you're in and you're just trying to reach civilization. You're trying to reach other people and you're trying to reach safety. And that's kind of the whole point in this, is that, and it's a different watching, the second time around, as we were messaging about that. And it's like some of the things that were funny, the first time, it's just not, because the tension's automatically there. And for me, it's like the tension starts at the first time she's in the parking garage. And I realized that as I'm watching it, like I'm physically tense and I'm like, it's because it's a woman in the parking garage. And that's all it takes.
Right. Exactly. And beyond the sort of societal commentary, another thing that I thought was very interesting, because Bria is such a horror person, and we ended up making this film in the context of the horror subgenre, the independent horror subgenre. And, we went to a lot of horror festivals, and just being a part of that community, at least on the outskirts of that community, I thought it was very interesting to use the film as an opportunity to also look back at the horror genre, right? So the idea of why do we feel like we need to slay the monster in the end? And if the monster isn't slain, how do we feel at the end, right? Like, are we depressed? Are we optimistic because she keeps fighting? So I was very drawn and intrigued by the idea of leaning into those horror tropes. And not necessarily trying to subvert them, but just asking questions about it, And, there's a lot of John Carpenter in the film. He's a huge hero for me, but, he did define the format, that we've all been sort of following ever since. So I think, yes, on the broader view as a metaphor for these larger conversations, but I'm also excited about the smaller conversations that are maybe more granular and specific to the horror genre, as in the context of horror as, this tool that we use to sort of work through trauma and fear and pain. I thought that the script worked on that level as well, which was another thing that was exciting to me as I was sort of getting pulled into the horror community and the horror genre. As someone who loves horror and is interested in horror and consumes horror, but doesn't necessarily want to recreate, right, or rehash something that we've seen before. So I thought that was a cool sort of aspect to what Bria put on the page.
And I think you did a really good job. Like you said, you weren't necessarily subverting tropes. There's so many shots that are set up to make horror fans feel what we feel with everything. Like the parking garage, when she drops stuff, the way it's framed, right? And when she's sitting in the driver's seat and you get the window, we're all waiting for it. We're all waiting for the man to be right there. And I love that he's not. And then I love that later, the parking garage goes batshit crazy. And holy hell, I love that scene, by the way. But no, you talk about Carpenter, and you totally get that feel. You get that Michael Myers feel standing outside looking in. But then you take it and you make it so much more horror to me. Because when he has keys and he can just enter the house, holy shit. Like this is so simple and yet so terrifying. And she's just like, that's not fair. And what I love about that is it's also not fair by horror rules, right? Like you can't do that. You got to bust the window. You got to do this. And it's not violent in that way. It's not smashing windows and being aggressive. It's literally just, you're fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
And wow.
Yeah.
So it's not subverting tropes, but whatever you did with it is amazing.
Yeah. Well, again, it's in the script. She really loved the idea of this masked man. And of course we took him in different directions, but what stayed from the beginning is the idea that he is a reflection of May. And in that way is inescapable, right? So he has the keys, he has access to all of these spaces in her life. And a lot of the movie is about like the spaces we inhabit, right? And specifically spaces that women inhabit where we're supposed to feel safe versus where we're supposed to be on guard or whatever the fuck. We're supposed to be aware. They always say aware of your surroundings. Okay. So it's playing around with a lot of those ideas, and Bria created this idea of the masked killer who is inescapable because he has access to everything, because he is a constant presence and he is a reflection of her space and her reality and where she is. So it's very creepy. It's very, very, very creepy because it's so real.
And it's just, she's vulnerable anywhere at all. And Laurel actually pointed out a super obvious one to me that I missed. So Laurel, I'm going to let you talk about it. And I just want to say that makes it even more vulnerable because of where it is.
Which one was it?
The Cooper's room.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Yeah. The mask that's hanging on the little boy's like closet door where she's like, she's finally given in and escaped to this place where she's with other people. So she should be safe.
Right.
And then there's the mask hanging from the little boy's, door, which she doesn't even see, but it's just like behind her, just sort of like lurking.
Yeah. And that is the man. And it was also a little bit of a nod to that it is this little boy who will grow up to be a man, you know? And so it's sort of hanging over him. And because there are men in the film, right? It's not like it's all from the perspective of women. There are certainly male characters who move in and out of the story and in their own ways are either complicit or directly responsible for things that happen, right? In the case of the man. That's such a small, it's one of those small, tiny things where I think that was actually the production designer came up to me and she was like, do you think it'll be too much to have the mask hanging over? And I was like, no, I think we're at that point in the movie. Yes. we can do it. Let's do it. And let's see how we feel. And I think it's there. And I think people notice it, but I don't know if they necessarily register it, especially on the first viewing. And there's a lot of little things like that throughout the film.
Yeah, I caught a lot more of them, kind of the second time around on it. And I like what you mentioned about the men being part of it and the way that they are either complicit or play a role in it, because, of course, the primary one there is Ted.
Yeah.
And
Ted.
He just, and he seems so sympathetic in some ways, right?
Yeah.
And
that's why I wanted to I knew Drew was perfect because I was like, he's such a sweet guy.
Oh, he was great. He was so great.
So good.
He's
but I noticed
funny.
Even from from the very beginning with them, like just little things like she makes the factual statement that something is cold or the ice cream's melting. And he's like, is it? You know, I mean, it's like just little things like that. He can't even just let her, and then he tells her maybe she's too sensitive, that his hands are too cold. And, it's a joke and it's funny, but it's also, it's constant, undermining, just constant. Yeah. And I just couldn't get over, the annoyance when he's first like, well, come on, get up. We have to fight for our lives now. He's not even going to let her, adjust to this. And then you didn't even check on me in the living room.
Oh my God, I love that line.
So it makes me laugh still when he says that. Yeah, he, it's very interesting. I will share that one of the number one pieces of, I don't know, criticism, but questions specifically from male readers and viewers. So when we did like a test screening or whatever, a lot of men wanted to know more about Ted. Like they really wanted to know. They're like, why is he the way he is? Where does he go when he disappears? And Brianna would just be like, nobody cares. It's not about Ted.
Yep.
Doesn't matter. He's gone. He left.
But Ted makes it about Ted.
Exactly.
Ted centers himself in it.
Yeah.
From almost the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what I love about Ted. Okay, number one, the way that he plays the fact that this happens all the time, right? Like, it is so funny to me even now because it's so out of place. And yet that's how gaslighting works. No matter how insane it is, this is how it works, right? And so like listening to his delivery is really funny to me, but thinking about his delivery scares the living shit out of me.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And, but what I love about Ted is he is the embodiment of not all men.
Yeah.
He's literally sitting there and he's like, I have the line here in front of me, so I get this right. Well, there you go. You probably blame me for this, don't you? I can't change things, May. This is how things are. That's not all men. It's not me. There's nothing I can do. That's life.
That's just
and then she yells at him and he says, I'm going to go. I can't be with you when you're like this. I'll come back when you've calmed down.
Right.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
Like this is the embodiment of everything I read online.
Oh God. Yes. When you've calmed down, the two words that you should never say to a woman at any point. I don't care what's going on.
Yeah.
I don't believe that any human in the history of humans has calmed down when being told those words.
Calm down. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. We specifically, so I really wanted to cast comedy actors. It was really important to me that we go out to people with a background in improv and sketch comedy, because I felt that these lines, look, dramatic actors can do anything, and I believe that, but I think that their instincts are to lean into the heaviness of dialogue like you just read, James. Yeah. Whereas I knew that a comedian would kind of come to it and find the lightness in it and the satire and the dryness. And that was really where I wanted to go with it. Because I think if you run that scene and you run it like really heavy, like just, again, hitting it over the head with the heaviness and the subtext of it. But to have the subtext actually be like comedic, like he is genuinely hurt by this exchange. Maybe it's just my own twisted sense of humor, but that was I felt that those instincts would lean into these beats in a way that would make it more interesting, and a little bit more watchable, right? Because that scene would be really hard to watch if it's just like, he's just horrible, if he's just like so mean and just a real son of a bitch. But because he plays it in this way that you would almost bring to a straight comedy, I think that we ended up with something very offbeat and interesting, and I think that was the right instinct ultimately to do that.
One of the other things I love about Ted, because Ted is just fascinating to me, but in like,
he's fun.
Just how he reflects too much of what I've seen in my life, but he stays in bed, right? Like when this kicks off and the man is in the house, he stays in bed. And he finally pulls himself out slowly while he's like telling her how this happens all the time. And then he's like, what are you doing in bed? That's the worst place you can be. Like, what? Oh my God, I love that. And while I'm here, I just want to say my favorite line in the entire movie is, "May, don't be ridiculous. It's the middle of the day."
I know.
And then later the man attacks during the middle of the day.
Multiple times.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Ted is not helpful in any way.
That's why he's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I liked him a lot. Yeah. I mean, when you're reading the script too, when I was reading it, that's when you get hooked in, right? You're kind of like, okay, I don't really know what's going on. This is sort of interesting. I guess I'm into it. And then he has the line of, that's the man that comes and tries to kill us every night. And then you're like, oh, okay, something is going on here. And so that's kind of what hooked me into her script from the beginning. And then of course we mentioned the parking garage scene. And that's really when I actually put the script down and I texted Bria and I said, hey, this is really interesting to me. Let's get on a call and talk about it. But it wasn't until I read that scene and it all sort of, the movie broadens out in scope in that third act, that I really felt like, okay, she's written something really cool here that can really tackle a lot of big ideas in a sort of small package. So those were the two beats for me that I got really excited and knew I was going to do the movie.
I love that. Laurel, do you have anything about Ted before I move to something else?
Oh, I have so many things about Ted, but that doesn't mean we have to completely stay on it. I don't know, just the way he is from the beginning to the very end. And, the way that she kind of acquiesces to that, the way that she just sort of just agrees with the gaslighting, just leans into it because it's the only way to get any kind of support. There's a lot about Ted, but I'll let you I'll let you go on because
I was also thinking about the first time that the man attacks and Ted basically makes the save here, right? Mm-hmm. But we find out very quickly that she can handle herself. She never has a huge problem fighting him off. Like she finds the way, right? Yeah. And I think it's really interesting on my third viewing, because I'm a little slow, how Ted makes this first save, and she just kind of sits and waits for Ted. Like not exactly. I didn't mean it exactly like I said it, but like she's not in I have to save myself mode yet. And I couldn't decide if that was I have somebody here who's helping protect me, or if it was actually just, hey, it's the first time and I don't know what to do. Do you have any input on either direction on that?
I think she's overwhelmed. And the idea is that Ted remembers. He has a memory, he's a part of this mirror universe, this bizarro universe. Mm-hmm. So it's just the example of it's kind of rote for him at this point. So he's kind of able to come in there and make the save. And then, of course, she sort of gears up once she's done it a few times. She becomes a little bit more pro. She's just sort of, it's brand new to her, right? So she's just she's in a different place than Ted is. But I think you bring up a good point that he can inflict harm, but that's not the real threat, right? The real threat is just her becoming worn down and exhausted by this repetitive, sort of never-ending exchange with the man. And that ultimately takes over, I think, as the primary threat. And it's less about this guy's going to stab me, and more the bigger existential dread of oh my God, am I trapped in this forever? Which I think is fun. And again, poking a little bit of fun, I think, at the horror genre.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I love that he often has the same weapon that she has.
Yes.
I thought that was interesting.
Yes, that's very intentional. Yeah, that's in the script. That was one of the most important things, I think, is the idea that whatever she has, he sort of shapeshifts into having a reflection of her weapon. So, she can never really get one up on him. He'll always sort of show up with the same tool or access or whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, and that's what I liked about it. It says so much, and maybe this is intentional, and maybe it's me, being a crazy English major. But for me, it's she has to work to go get these tools. And then being a man, he's like, oh yeah, I have one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even think about that.
I thought that was very interesting.
It's Yeah, I kind of thought of it as like the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland, where she's like, oh, you have to run as fast as you can just to stay in place, which I always thought was a great metaphor for being a woman. Just to stay still, you have to run at full speed. So it's a little bit of that. Definitely, I think it's a little bit of a hint, a little bit of a wink at that. And I think just Bria, I think, was just very interested in the script, at least, in challenging this main character, right? So this main character is she's a self-help book author. She's someone who, quote unquote, has all the answers. And then she's sort of confronted with this series of impossible situations, which I think is also very fun for a filmmaker, right? Like, oh, let's take this character who's supposed to have all the answers and then put her in these like completely, removed from reality problems where there are no solutions. That's like a very fun scenario to bring to life.
Absolutely.
And she's a fun character too, because, this, everybody kind of views a film through the lens of, their own experience and things like that. I know, like, it struck me very early that May was much more assertive than I think I would be in anything. Like, even to the first time that she attacks the guy, she doesn't question herself. She doesn't,
Yes.
hesitate. She's just like, you're in my house.
She's very confident. Yeah. She's very, I mean, she has to be. She's a book author. She goes on all these tours. She's like a public speaker. Like, it makes sense to me that was never a question for me, that the character isn't capable in some ways. That's not her flaw, right? Her character flaw has nothing to do with her quote unquote capability. It has to do with a lot of other problems that become apparent, obviously, as the movie continues.
And I think what really struck me with it, though, too, was like, it just almost made it, I don't know, a little bit, I guess the way I saw it was like, wow, if this woman who will, smack talk the police and who will tell off her agent, which I was cheering about, if she can, if she can't win with this guy, what on earth chance would I have? Because it's like she is.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
She doesn't seem to have like the same, I don't want to say baggage, hangups or whatever. It's just like that, as you said, that's definitely not her flaw. She goes in and does, and it is the right thing to do. There's no reason to hesitate. There's just societal constraint and like conditioning that make you do that. And so it's just crazy to think like, even if, because people always like, armchair quarterback in everything that happens, right? They're just like, oh, well, man, I would never have gone there with that guy, or I would have kicked his ass, 2 seconds into it. And it's like, I don't know. But this woman does. She launches right into it, and it's still not enough.
Well, a lot of characters, I think a lot of horror writing maybe doesn't challenge, the writers don't challenge themselves to make the characters not do stupid things, right? So I think it's, to have her not, that her problem is not that she makes stupid decisions. Her problem is she thinks she can go it alone. She thinks she doesn't, she can't connect to other people. She's got this guilt that's sort of riding over her through the whole film. She's got these sort of deeper character flaws, motivations that are ultimately preventing her from, connecting with her assistant, connecting with her sister-in-law, connecting with the other women around her. And I think that is much more interesting than someone who's just like, doop, 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 I'm going to go down this dark hallway. So again, that comes from the script of Bria wanting to have a character that feels a little bit more three-dimensional in that way.
Yeah,
I think that's great. I mean, so much of horror is some survivor girl just, lucking into the end and being in the right place and somehow getting the right tool, and this, like you guys said, she just jumps in and starts handling her business. I love how everything ties in, like her entire thing with the agent. No matter how good she is, no matter how prepared she is, no matter, maybe this book is the ultimate savior for everybody. I don't know. But it doesn't matter, because some guy is like, we don't know yet. And then another man is the only one who can talk to that guy. She can't talk to him. You have to let me go talk to him, And then he says that's how it works, which is obviously a running thing with men in this.
Yeah.
So I thought it was
that she
interesting
adopts. She adopts that she has internalized that thing, So by the end of that parking lot sequence, when her assistant is asking for, let's go try and help these other people, she regurgitates that bullshit back to this other character, right? She says, we can't help all of them, right? This is just how it is. And so, as we arrive in this third act, we realize, she's not going to be able to escape this sort of prison because she's internalized it to such a degree.
Well, and let's jump to that scene because I really want to talk about that scene. But she says, "I don't know her." And that hit me so hard because I see it all the time.
Yeah.
Not just with women, like my friends who are Black or anything else, like, people say, oh, I'll help people I know.
Yeah.
Right. And wow, that line hit me hard. Like, exactly what this woman is going through, but you don't know her, so it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Because she's tired, right? And that's what's so insidious about this system is that it does not empower us to be empathetic and to put out a helping hand. It keeps everybody down in that way. And so, it's less of an indictment on May herself as it is the system, right? That she's just sort of adapted to and is trying to thrive in, as a matter of fact. And I think that is the ultimate tragedy of the story and why it is a horror movie, right? It is not a comedy. It's not a straight comedy. It does have horror in it because we are sort of going down that path and we're saying that ultimately this does destroy these characters. And that is, I think that's the sad truth of why this character is not able to escape whatever you want to call it, the looking glass or bizarro land or whatever, the nightmare. And I thought that was just very real. When I read the script, it was like, reminded me of times that I haven't been there for somebody, and that I haven't been the best feminist that I could be. And people don't want to have those conversations, right? Like, men, women, everybody in between, like we don't want to acknowledge our own failings in that way. And I thought her script was very challenging in that way, to challenge us to say, yeah, I've been there, when it's like, I don't know her. I don't know her. I'm not going to get involved. And that is very real.
And that's the flip side. We only have so much energy. We only have so much we can do. And maybe you can't take on helping someone else right now. So I think it's a super powerful scene because, at least for me, my initial reaction was, what? You're not going to help others when you just went through this? But the reality is we just can't. And I love how much is in that little tiny exchange right there.
Yeah.
Laurel, what do you got on this scene?
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, and like you said, Natasha, I've been there too, where I, can look back on times that I failed to do what, I would maybe have hoped someone would do for me. And sometimes, a lot of times it has to do with the system is so insidious that it's not just about not having the energy to help someone, but when you can see from these situations, when you involve yourself in someone else's struggle, you open yourself up to that as well. You have put yourself in an additional amount of danger. And I have watched people be brave. I have watched people stand up and say and do the right things with all of the evidence in the world to present. And they still get just steamrolled.
Yeah.
And so when you look at that and you say, wow, that happened to this person, I can't put myself through that. Right. And I sure as hell can't, I'm barely hanging on. I can't jump into someone else's battle, it's that we are constantly shown the futility of it.
So the other context of what was happening when I was reading Bria's script, it came to me in 2018, end of the year 2018, it was actually the Brett Kavanaugh hearings. And it was this crushing feeling of like, wow, they really fucking hate us. And there is no there, like what you just said, I thought was so well spoken, right? Like you can stand up and you'll just be pushed right back down. And it was an entire nation of women who were all feeling that feeling at the same time. And obviously it was difficult, but I think it was, people like to talk about Me Too movement and all of these very important movements, but I think it's actually these very specific moments in time, right? It was her giving her testimony back to back with him giving his testimony. And those two videos back to back with each other, and everyone was just thinking the same thing. Like, God, is there any more obvious example of the division here, and the inequity? And so that was sort of the background of what was happening, and the conversations and my own feelings and my own history, and sort of working through how I was feeling about all of that. And then I got Bria's script, which I thought was really tackling those feelings head on. And so I think it also came to me in one of those times when I was just like, you can't look away from the TV in those moments. And it is such a specific period in time that I will always remember and associate with reading the script for the first time. And so I think a lot of the passion and the drive that came not just from me, but from a lot of people who were working on the film is born out of those very specific moments. And for me, that was a big one for sure. But that's what the movie's talking about, especially in that scene. That is exactly what she's talking about. It's like, I don't have the energy to get up and do this thing that you're asking me to do.
Yeah. I hadn't even considered Kavanaugh as part of this. And as you're saying it, like it adds such weight to what I watched. Because I'm not even going to pretend to understand it on the level that women do. But I remember being so furious watching these videos because she's so calm and like answering questions. And he was just the biggest little baby whiner bitch I've ever seen. Yeah. And I was like sitting here like, how do you want this as a representation of the greatest court in our country, Right. And I was super angry. And so, yeah, like thinking about it in context
you have every
of this
right
movie.
You have every right to, though, right? Because this movie, Lucky, is not just for women. And I think that's something that I think I push back against that idea, because I think a lot of the most interesting conversations I've actually had have been with men who don't want that, right? Like the system goes both ways. And so I hope that men can be open to having these conversations, right? Like opening themselves up and being vulnerable and saying like, yeah, that fucking pissed me off. I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this behavior, and I don't agree with this system because it's not right. It is wrong, objectively wrong.
Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. It really, I'm glad that you say that there've been some really good conversations with women about it. I've had quite a few as well, and people who've thanked me for drawing their attention to it, and saying like, well, I hope I've never been like that, but I want to be more, aware of it. But I think like I keep coming back to this, like, because in some ways, you see all these women being, hurt in this scene, and no one is helping. There's no men around. There's nobody who is stepping in. Yeah. There's nobody who's helping this. But it's interesting because, and I don't want to like classify and say this is every man everywhere, but I feel like a lot of men have this desire that they want to help on this, hypothetical level. I will just never. I used to weightlift, and one day I stupidly got caught under my bar because I tried for one more rep and didn't get it. And so, I wasn't hurt or anything, but I was like, I had to very, shamefully be like, excuse me, can someone help? And like 10 guys come rushing up because they're just like, they just were dying for that kind of an opportunity. It's like, this is something, exact, like physical that I can do. And I just want to be like, I want you to take that energy and I want you to apply it to these other things. I want you to apply it to having the hard conversations with the women in your life, the men in your life, with really examining this, because the really, I don't know, I don't want to say the really, upsetting or hard thing about this, because there's a lot that is, but it's that unfortunately, male voices still, in a lot of ways, carry more weight.
Yes.
So we can scream at the top of our lungs, and we're not going to get through to some people until, a male comes in and throws his voice on it, which I appreciate. I appreciate when people recognize that and step in for it.
But that shouldn't be the system.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we need better
absolutely.
tools. We need better tools, 100%. And again, it's like the Bria says this in a very, I think, succinct way, where she says, like, we're not trying to offer solutions, right? The film is not trying to be prescriptive or say, like, here's what you should do in this context, because it is such a huge question, right? Like, we're not, in 90 minutes, we're not going to like solve this problem. And so, I see the film really as just being in the slot of, here's a conversation starter, right? Like, we are opening the door. Now the movie's over. It's up to you guys to go get a glass of wine, go get a beer, go, whatever it is that you enjoy. And now talk about the conversation. What kind of tools can we do moving forward? How have we been in these situations? What did she do that you think was wrong, right? What did she do that was right? Because I've also seen people argue over, some people defend her, some people blame her. And so I think that's an interesting, that's really where I wanted the film to live. And that is the space that I think a film like this should occupy as a film that asks questions and isn't trying to, give solutions.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I saw the most with the comments that I read was people were confused as to why there's no answers. And it's like, that's not the point of the film at all. And if you watched it, you should know that, you know, but I keep coming back to this thought that, so the best way I can say this, I'm just going to be honest. I've said it on this show a lot of times, but my mother's very racist. Okay. And I hear her, and when she speaks, she thinks I'm not racist because I'm not actively hunting down black men and hanging them in a tree. Okay. And sure, that's one definition, I guess, but I feel like a lot of people feel the same way with this sort of thing. It's, oh, I'm pro-female because I don't do these things. And that's great. That's a start. Wonderful. But you're not doing anything else, and it's that swing to the other side. It's what are you actively doing to make it better? And I feel like that's the thing people are missing with this is they want the answer, but if you gave them the answer the whole time, the answer is the system is fucked and we need to change it. And they're like, and they're like, I don't understand, So
well, that's why these conversations are so important to have in person. I think and movements are so important. While you were talking, I was thinking a lot about last summer and the Black Lives Matter movement that was so important, right? Because it's not just about getting out in the streets and marching for what you believe in. It's about the conversations that happen afterwards, right? So what does it mean to have white privilege? What does it mean to benefit from, a system that is built for you and not for somebody else, right? Like those conversations are ultimately so much more important than the film, or, I hate to say it, I'm a filmmaker. I want films to be important, but it's the conversations, right? Like it's getting people in a room together and talking it out and hashing it out and getting those things out in the world, It's really important. And unfortunately, I think the internet has taken over that space, and it's not a adequate replacement for a one-on-one conversation or a group of friends getting together and talking about these challenging things. That's why I was very excited about the BLM movement happening, because I was seeing people who wouldn't normally be having these conversations or using these sort of learning this vocabulary, challenging themselves, suddenly starting to challenge themselves in that way. Obviously, we have much, much, much farther to go, but it's a start, right? Like it's one baby step forward.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that any step in the right direction is good, but we got to keep moving, right? Like,
yeah. So but the internet, man, the internet is bad for you, dude. Like, I don't
could
fuck
not
with the
agree
internet.
more. Yeah.
Laurel, I don't know. Have we ever talked about that?
Oh yeah. It's It's no bueno. I steer clear of it as much as possible.
Well, yeah, it unfortunately kind of just opens up another space for those sorts of things to happen. And I'm a believer in freedom of expression, but definitely not freedom from consequences. And that seems to be
safety is a real it's a real issue and not a conversation that we have really had yet, specifically for women and at-risk communities. It's just completely been sidestepped. And I think that's a huge problem. And frankly, it's a huge part of the reason I stepped away from most social media. I was just like, I literally, I do not feel safe. I don't feel supported. I don't feel safe. I'm not getting enough pleasure out of this to justify this feeling of feeling not safe. And so, yeah, that's it. That was it. Goodbye. Time to go.
I truly admire that. I'm trying to get there. I'll say straight out, like, a lot of social media stuff, I went into it and I was like, oh, this is great. I found people like me and with my interests. And then the longer you're there, the darker it gets. And I've reached a point recently, I've repeatedly been like, hey, taking 3 days off of Facebook or whatever. Cause I have like my kids are on there, like my 19-year-old's on there. And if he sees that I'm not posting, he worries about me, so I make posts like, hey, taking some time off. But the more I look at it, the more I realize how much happier I am overall not ingesting this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's not reality. It's not reality. And I also get nervous. This is, I think, a different conversation, but I get nervous as I see it being manipulated more and more by corporations and it's not really of the people anymore. When you start to see these like big trending movements and just the level of manipulation that's happening from, commercial and corporate entities really freaks me out. I'm a huge sci-fi fan and I grew up reading like William Gibson and all this like cyberpunk shit. And I to this day am still very into it. And I just see it unfolding in real life. And it's just like, oh, we got to be careful. We got to be real careful here because crazy things start to happen when the internet starts to replace how we perceive reality and relationships and interactions. Anyway, that's another movie, I guess.
No, I mean, I worry. Yeah, definitely. I worry about like how my kids will deal with social media, like, or how they're dealing with it now. Like I remember how impossible high school was for me. I can't imagine if I could come home and be bullied 24 hours a day or like not know who I can trust that I'm talking to or whatever else. Like, holy shit. Like we think it's bad as adults. I can't imagine what it's like at that age.
Yeah, I agree.
Too, when I see, and I'm not their parents, so it's not up to me to tell them not to be, but like when I have like very young people follow me on Twitter, I just want to be like, this is really not a space for you. Like, I don't want to make people feel unwelcome, but I'm like, I'm concerned about the adults that are interacting with you because, these are people who are a lot older than you. They have different life experiences that you don't know what their motivations are. And I just make it a point, I don't really interact, and I don't have any ill intentions, but I'm also like, there's just no reason for me to. That just seems like a.
Well, you're a very responsible person, clearly. Well, most people are not as responsible.
I think it's, it's when you look back though, it's at your own, adolescence and everything. For me anyways, it's, there were a lot of times I interacted with people who were way too old for me to be dealing with. And I'm just like, the life experience difference there is just, we need to be in protect mode.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. We have a responsibility, absolutely. And I mean, I will just say, just to briefly bring it back to Lucky real quick. I thought it was interesting, speaking of that May, this character is, what does Bria call it? I think she calls it like 90s boss lady feminism, which I love. It's that that idea of lean in,
Yeah.
And I know for my generation, like we were very much raised in this like whatever you want, you can have it all. You can have a family and a career. You want to be an astronaut? No problem. And it was almost this like rose-colored glasses thing. So when, then the world started pushing back on us, it was a little bit shocking, right? And I think maybe there was like this new generation, I think, of women and the new version of feminism that is intersectional, right? Like the idea of intersectionality being pivotal, like there is no point to it if it's not for all of us, and inclusive, right? Like trans women need to be part of this movement. And that broadening of awareness and not just this like kind of bullheaded approach that I think May encapsulates, right? Her whole thing is you don't need anybody. You can do it by yourself. And, you don't need a man. You don't need a friend. You can just go it alone. That was very much, I think, something else that I was interested in, because I don't think that form of feminism has necessarily served us or served me particularly well, right? And I'm much more excited about this newer generation of feminists and this more difficult version of it that is more challenging, I think will ultimately pay off for our society, right? If we're able to actually turn it into real results. But I thought that was kind of interesting. And that is her age, right? She's not like a 20-year-old final girl. She's very much like a final woman. She's fully grown. She has a career. And so looking at those frailties of the feminism that we grew up with, I think was really, was fun for me. And I was into it.
I didn't. Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. I hadn't really, but she definitely does embody, that kind of ideal. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it really didn't serve us because kind of the point was, it's like there was no support structure. There was no,
and it wasn't true.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, sure, you can have it all if you don't sleep.
Right. And you're a billionaire.
Yeah. And you're not susceptible to stress or anything else, yes, you can absolutely have children. And, also make sure it was so striking to me too, that May, was very focused on like correcting her appearance, and I never got an impression of like a vanity thing. Mm-mm. It always very much put off as like, this is part of my persona. I can't let people see, past this certain point. Like I need to clean up the blood. I need to wash, the blood off of my face at least, and make sure that I'm at least somewhat presentable, and the concern
she's usually pretty buttoned up. Yeah.
Yeah. And to have that still be a concern. But I thought, I was thinking about it when she was talking in the scene where they all kind of like burst into song, which is hilarious to me. There's got to be that consideration that in order to be taken seriously, you need to have a certain appearance of respectability. You have to talk in a certain tone. You have to be calm, right? You can't be angry.
Exactly.
You can't be hysterical. And it's not okay to have these, it's not okay to be angry about someone attacking you in your own house.
Yeah. Yeah. And the interaction with her assistant, who is a younger woman, the assistant is showing emotion, right? She's getting really upset. She's yelling. She's emoting in this way that I think May is very turned off by. And that's absolutely part of who May is. And that's why we kind of have her, I think her shirt is literally buttoned all the way up in the beginning.
Like, it is.
Her braids, I wanted her braids to be like very tight and neat. And, everything is just sort of put together and neat and fits into this idea of herself. And then again, once those ideas start to be challenged, she's not really able to ever escape it. And is ultimately trapped in the nightmare.
Even when she's cleaning, like she's cleaning towards the beginning, and she's got the nice button-up shirts, and she's got her sleeves kind of like folded perfectly. And I was like, man, that is not what I look like when I clean. I'm like, which shirt is it going to be okay if Clorox hits it?
Right. You guys
so it really stuck out to me. Yeah, I claim I do. I zoom clean. It's just the part that I zoom clean, so it's whatever you can see in the Zoom meeting. That's the area I clean. But So no, but I just really struck me there. And then right before she goes to bed, before this pops off, she's looking in the mirror and she's adjusting her hair and making sure that her top is perfect. Like I love that. It's so ingrains her personality without saying anything.
Yes, exactly. She's keeping up her idea of who she is and herself. And it's sort of like that she's trying to hold on to that idea even as the world is becoming more and more crazy around her, right? But then we do see her start to loosen up. So by the end of the movie, she's pretty disheveled, and we really are able to bring her on that journey of like starting really buttoned up and polished, and then she's pretty messed up by the end of the movie.
And the other thing that I really noticed that I loved about the scene where she's getting ready to go to bed, it starts out and it looks like we're looking at her, but it's her reflection. Mm-hmm. And I thought that in itself said so much. Like, no matter what you think you're looking at, it's not necessarily real, And and when you go into like the cracked dishes and the cracked windows and the way reality cracks around this whole thing, and I don't know if the ending is even reality anymore, and I'm fine with not knowing. But I love how.
To me, she's like totally in the Twilight Zone. Like the whole movie is just like a long episode of the Twilight Zone to me, right? Like she's just going deeper and deeper and deeper into bizarro land. And that's actually very scary to me. Like I think that the idea of being trapped in a nightmare, like Nightmare on Elm Street was really impactful for me when I was a kid, or Hellraiser, like the idea of not being able to wake up or leave is very scary. And so again, it's not the guy chasing after you. It's the fact that your whole world is scary now, right? You're in this nightmare and you can't leave it.
Yeah. It doesn't even matter with him anymore. Like he might've been the door, but everything is fucked. So
exactly.
Yeah. Because the scariest part is that nobody is even acting like there's anything wrong with this.
Right.
And they keep focusing on the wrong things and they keep dismissing her. And I don't know, one of my favorite lines, I just died when the cop tells her to get some mace. It's really effective. Yeah. And she was like, I used a golf club and it was not very effective. Yeah, try the mace anyway. Okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of Alice in Wonderland in this movie. Like a lot of the, direction that that's Larry Cedar. He's one of my favorite actors to work with. It was a little bit like the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland, right? Like, oh, we're all mad here. Like this is our normal, And so for him, it was very important that it was, that he not over accentuate those lines, right? It's like, no, you're just having a normal conversation with her, but what you're saying, the text of what you're saying is insane. But this is, again, it's that Mad Hatter, we're all mad here, that I think is very effective for me, anyway, is like that idea of like, oh my God, I can't, it's you're in a dream that you can't wake up from, So, and I think the mirror imagery, the cracked imagery, the way the score sort of interacts, those are all sort of participating in building in this imagery, whether people sort of like viscerally experience it and don't really like see it consciously. But I think just any way that we could kind of build in those Twilight Zone elements, we were trying to do, especially in the house. There's a lot of crazy shit. Paintings change, sculptures change, figurines change. So there's just like a lot of displacement happening throughout that whole first act that I think is really important before things like really go off the rails. We're trying to sort of plant the seeds of the craziness to come.
I love that.
One of the ones that stuck out to me was the hand on the table. It's like it's pointing with a number 1. I loved that. I was just like, what a strange thing to put in your house,
So the hands, this is a fun Easter egg. The hands throughout the film actually indicate the number of attacks that we're at.
Oh.
So the one is the first night he comes, and then if you go back and watch it a 4th time, you'll see the hands.
It's gonna happen.
They start counting up. So you'll see a hand with like 2 digits up, and then 3 digits, and then 4 digits. So it's each time that he comes, the hands mirror it basically.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. So I love that. But the first time I was just like, what a strange thing to have in your house. And then when the second one hit, I was like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
And then I phased out at some point, and I don't think I ever saw 4 and 5, but I will. Maybe I see one each time I watch it. I don't know.
There you go. There you go.
There's another piece that was kind of, I couldn't decide if it was really there or if it was me and I'd just like been breaking this down too much. But when she's doing the dishes at the beginning, are there reflections of the man in the window?
There are. Good catch. Yes. He is, in fact, in a few frames of the movie. Yep. So he's already sort of lurking and around because he's going to pop up that night. So he's sneaking around.
Well, I was this last time I was watching it on my computer, and so I was like, well, if I was in the living room on the big screen, I could probably see this better. But
yeah, let that be a lesson. Watch it on the biggest screen possible. He's hidden into a few frames actually. There's a few shots where he doesn't really make himself known, but he is in the background of shots.
And I love that because it's always haunting you whether he's actively attacking or not.
Yeah, he's great. Around. He's always around.
Laurel, what else do you got?
Well, I kind of we're skipping around some, so I'll go ahead and go to, part of the ending here. I thought it was, especially since so much, with May, part of her characterization is that she does go it alone. It's so important for her. And, in a lot of ways that path and that behavior is supported by the other people in the movie, because with the exception of like Edie and Sarah, no one is really offering her any assistance anyway. So, it's hard to say that she's even wrong to do it that way. It's like, well, hey, this is what you're counting on. And to me, it was so effective and so crushing that when she finally completely and utterly against her will, is just so tired and she tells Ted, please don't go again. I need you. Mm-hmm. No sooner does she admit that need, no sooner does she rely on another person than that person is swept right out from under her. And she's alone again. And it was just that was just so effective because it's like, you just feel like they were just waiting for that moment. And it's like, what, is it even any better? Is it worse? She was on her own before, but now she's made this admission and it's almost like she's given herself a weakness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that is a horror trope that I think we liked a lot, was that idea of we've reached relative safety or some relative breath, like ability to just like breathe for a moment and then to sort of immediately jump back into the action. That was something that I thought, she chose to put into the script there, and she chose to bring Ted back in that way and then take him away again, which I think is, exactly what you said. Like, as soon as she sort of made this concession, I guess you could say, it's immediately sort of reneged on, right? It's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. Like, you're back on your own. So, that third act gets pretty crazy. For sure.
I love when it starts jumping everywhere. Like Ted's suddenly in the back seat and then, the car's just in front of the house. Like all of that was just so good because on the one hand, that could be very like we're in bizarro world, like you said, but it's also just how trauma works. Yeah. Trauma, you can just phase out and you're like, how the fuck did I get over here? Or you can just forget things or black things out. And so I thought that was really, really effective. But one of the things that I love about Ted in the back seat is that obviously Ted kind of looks like the man sometimes, or the man looks like Ted sometimes rather. I love that there's that initial reaction of who's in the back seat. Like you think it's the man instantly, it's that.
Well, it is.
I thought that was absolutely. And that's what I love about it. It's like, even when it's somebody who's supposed to be semi-safe, like that threat is still there and that terror and that feeling. So I adored that.
Yeah.
Plus again, I love how weird Ted is. So him Ted's magically showing up in the back seat is just great. I'm like, what the hell?
He's a real weirdo. He's just like, I'm back. Let's go home. Yeah.
I do that to my wife all the time. I just hide in the back seat and magically appear. It's not normal.
Don't help her when she's in the parking garage. Just make sure you stay back there so you can pop up later.
Well, if I helped her in the parking garage, she'd know I was there. That would ruin the surprise. No, really, I love how it just fits Ted so much. I don't know. That was just great.
popping in and out. Yeah. Yeah. We just wanted to sort of start breaking rules was the main thing was, rules of time, space, color, even like the color of the sky is a little funky, like just starting to break all the rules of her reality. Again, like I kept going back, and this was a very helpful sort of shortcut for me and the team, was to say like, it's the Twilight Zone,
Yeah.
It is not reality. It is a twisted version of it. That is a metaphor for our reality, So that was, that's like the full expression of it, I guess.
This final, I kind of alluded to it earlier, where he's got the keys, and it's just that big, like, that's not fair, when she just says that over and over again. Like, she thought there were rules. She's been trying to play by the rules, and men just keep changing the rules. Holy crap. I love this scene. And then, the death is fast, or, assumed death. She stabs him in the neck, and they both fall. My question is about the way they fall. He ends up with his hand on her side, right above her hip. And way, way earlier, when this is first popping off, Ted is holding her in a very similar way. And
yeah.
And I just want to know, like, what was the full thought process on that? Because to me, like, Ted doing it is almost a symbol of like, I'm your safety, I'm doing this. And then he literally turns his back on her, right? Because he wants to go back to sleep. And having the man do the same thing, I thought it was a very interesting position, but I don't think that I fully understand it.
Yeah, that is one of those, I was talking earlier where there is intentionality, but sometimes instinct sort of comes and takes over and intuition. Yeah, that was something we worked out on the day, and I knew that I wanted them sort of wrapped in an embrace, because I think there is this sort of gothic attitude to the idea of these two sort of literally wrapped in this battle that is very intimate. Conceivably forever, unless she gets out of the nightmare, and that it is almost like this Dracula-esque thing, right? Like it is this, very intense, intimate, crossing a line into her physical self that I felt was just a nice physical embodiment of the issue that we were talking about, which has a lot to do with space, has a lot to do with body and who gets to touch bodies and how, and extending that to the relationship of these two figures, again, who are just sort of wrapped around each other. And even the way that their hands meet around the glass shard at the top is meant to be almost this intimate. It's intimate, I guess that's sort of the best way I can think about it. And yeah, the hand on the hip is absolutely, it's a nod to possessiveness, right? So the idea of putting your hand on your partner's hip in that way, that is sometimes very lovely and comforting, and in other contexts is very, very filled with threat, right?
Yeah. And
so riding that line and using that body language to, again, just keep challenging, right? Like everything in the movie, we wanted to challenge, not settle into an easy with a bow on top, right? And that positioning is very much a part of that. So it could be this very, not the more typical thing, right? There's just like blood everywhere and they're cowering away from each other and whatever. But we have this opportunity to have a more expressionistic attitude at the end of this movie, and to play around with that a little bit more. And so I guess that's my very inarticulate way of saying we wanted to be a little bit more subversive, and we wanted to have something that would, yes, absolutely make us think about how she and Ted would interact, or is, how does she feel about his hand being there on her hip, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it opened up and it was a very like sort of intuitive thing of like, yeah, they should be wrapped in this, again, sort of like Gothic tradition of a closeness. There's a closeness to death. There's this like almost Edgar Allan Poe-esque embrace that they're wrapped in there at the end of the movie. I don't know. That probably doesn't really answer your question, but
no. It really does. And I was actually on the right track, but I just didn't quite get there. I really like the idea of it being intimate, as you said, like not in the same way, obviously, but I enjoyed that. Like it felt weird that he was touching her, but it didn't feel like rapey gross,
No.
And
no, it's not that. It's not
I
that
think
on the nose. Yeah.
Yeah, but it stuck with me so much more. The very first time I saw it, I thought he stabbed her in the side and they had stabbed each other. And then as the camera kind of pans and you really see his hand, because you don't see it at first, you kind of see like a finger. And then the camera moves and then you see more of his full hand. And I was like, well, that's weird. I thought he stabbed her, but no. And then this third viewing today, I was like, wow, that's exactly what Ted was doing. And I pointed it out to Laurel, and now here we are, because I guess I'm rambling. But okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I was only going to say you're part of the only reason I even know how to pick things out in movies anyways. So I never...
a lot of these things are meant to be sort of subtle and not necessarily like, put an exclamation on it. And I think that is one of those beats where it's like, it's even the fact that in the script, the man is written to be much like bigger and scarier and much more like Michael Myers. And we really toned him down quite a bit. We made him a little bit more, posh, a little bit more put together, primarily as in an effort to make him more of a reflection of May, so that they sort of match each other more. But also in the sense that like this isn't the patriarchy is insidious, and it's not always a Michael Myers, right? Sometimes it's just some dude who looks like he works at a hedge fund. So, I think finding the ways to make things a little bit more subtle, and again, I know it frustrates some viewers, and that's fine. And they'll be frustrated and, maybe it'll prepare them for another project down the line, right? That can continue to sort of challenge the what audiences are expecting, I guess. And that shot is very much a part of that.
I like that. So then we remove the mask finally, and let me first say, I love that it's basically a clear mask, because you still can't tell what he looks like for sure. And I think that that's so incredibly effective. I'm so used to Jason or Michael Myers or some crazy mask, and the clear mask like still distorts everything. But obviously when we take it off, it gets even crazier, right? So I wrote Laurel and I was like, hey, what do you think of this ending? Like, I need to know your thoughts once you see who's behind the mask. And I didn't get an answer, Laurel. So what did you think when you saw Behind the Mask?
You're right. That was on my to-do list and I didn't answer.
I couldn't resist.
I felt like it was very, I don't know how to describe it except yes. I feel, I don't know, seen with it or that's correct. That's the truth because like you said, Natasha, as far as like the way that he looked, it is more insidious. It's not always some big hulking guy that you would necessarily say this person is dangerous. It can literally be any man, and it can be someone you already know. It could be someone you've had nothing but good experiences with, and maybe they're doing it to someone else, or maybe they changed their behavior. And I think, what is also what I kind of took away from it too, and it's something that I do think that I hope that men can look at and be okay with experiencing some discomfort with, Because the fact of the matter is it's something
Mhm.
that I've just started noticing more and more, like the last couple years as I've tried to be more alert to it. Like, I don't just want you to not attack me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I want
Mhm.
I want men to be aware of the way in which we have to live our lives. Like, just, I
Mhm.
mean, things like I was at the grocery store, I always shop by myself, and this man like stopped and was like just dead on locked staring at me. And I was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
fuck, I'm gonna have to change aisles now. I can't even get, the ice cream I want."
Yeah.
And so I'm
Yeah.
going to turn, and then he immediately starts coming towards me, like at high speed, like really,
Mhm.
intent. And I'm like, am I going to have to shove this guy into a freezer?
Yeah.
And then he like
Yep.
just veers off to get a pizza. And I'm like, I mean, that's fine. I feel that way about food too. But the whole point is you were
No,
alone with
that
a woman in
shouldn't
an
be.
aisle, and you
Yeah.
you should have been more aware. I mean, if I suddenly lunge at him screaming,
Yeah.
and I'm still screaming about Breyer's coffee ice cream, I'm still going to elicit a reaction. You're
Yes.
responsible. I just want men to be more aware.
Aware. Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I can really add anything to that except it's going to be a process, I guess, and it starts with feeling uncomfortable, and it starts with acknowledging uncomfortable truths, right? That some spaces are not for women, are not spaces that we are welcome in, and that's really fucked up. I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
pretty crazy. That's insane that half of our population is just expected to go through life in certain spaces feeling like I have to be on my guard. And that, of course, is the core absurdity that Bria was writing about. And that is really what the whole thing sort of sparks from, and why I thought it was interesting to take it into this absurdist space. Right? So we're creating an absurdist, satirical Twilight Zone reality to look at a real life absurdity, to sort of put a spotlight on it. And that was really that. It's really that simple. That's what we were setting out to do. And yeah, I think some people are not interested in that. They just want to have a fun experience, and they want to be on a ride and have sort of an experiential film to enjoy, and that's fine. But that's not the movie we made.
Well, I judge them. Normally, I'm totally open to the idea, that art is subjective and everything, but I just want to be like, no, if you don't like this movie, you can't be my friend. I'm sorry. We're just not compatible on that level.
I do love the idea of it being the pre-date homework. Like,
It's pretty awesome.
that's pretty funny. Yeah.
This is what we'll be discussing on the date.
I have to tell Bria that. Yeah, she'll get a real kick out of that.
Natasha, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just like shouting out to some of the technical people, if folks are interested in more technical stuff. Worked with just a really amazing team, men and women. We had our DP Julia Swain is a massively talented cinematographer. She and I collaborate a lot, and so it was really fun to just have a project that we could play so much visually, and have an ever evolving look. So the look of the movie at the beginning is very different than the look of the movie at the end. Of course, we're still following certain rules, but we were sort of trying to figure out how we could sort of constantly be evolving the look as she's sort of falling deeper and deeper through the looking glass. And so it was really fun to have a DP who just was like really game to try funky stuff, while of course maintaining this sort of cinematic the illusion, right? Like the illusion of like, this is a movie. This is not real. So she was really excellent to work with. Great technical team, production design, all of the team was just great. And then, yeah, working with Jeremy Zuckerman on the score was just a real pleasure. And I think similarly to a lot of people on the project, this film was, much smaller than what he would normally do, but it was an opportunity to really play with some more, borderline experimental techniques and, to explore a side of himself and his sound that maybe he's not able to do on more commercial projects. So I think it was just an opportunity, similar to working with Julia, to collaborate with somebody who was just really game to try some funky stuff that would feel really expressionistic and really tied into the film, and not about, oh, let's make like this really commercial, sexy soundtrack. Let's do something that is really in keeping with the themes, the characters, and the overarching metaphor of the movie. So, I just want to shout out, I guess, to those technical members of the team, because they really, they put their mark on the movie, and it's a big part of the reason the movie is unique and dynamic, is because these folks brought themselves to it.
I love that.
It does seem like just every little aspect of it was, it just seems like everyone really brought their A game to it, and was just, we're willing, because the score definitely there. It's so interesting to me the way it gets like atonal, and like, as soon as everything gets weird, it's such this interesting signal to it. And I loved that part of it. And I did want to mention, because I thought that the delivery on it was fantastic, but the actress who plays Sarah, when May notices her scar, and she just sort of like the way that she delivers those lines when she's sort of like brought back to that memory was just like, oh man, that was just an incredibly effective gut punch. And then she immediately deflects and goes back to something else. I just thought that was just every little thing that was done was just beautifully delivered.
And she's actually another comedian.
Is she?
She is a wonderful, very, very funny, sketch comedy artist. She's a horror fan, which is why she did the movie. But a lot of people were stretching new and different muscles on this movie, which was a lot of fun. But she's wonderful. Kausar Mohammed is her name. She's wonderful. Keep an eye out for her. She's
definitely
huge talent. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Very cool.
Oh, and I did actually want to go back to something that you said. That just reminded me.
Go ahead.
The working relationship and the collaboration with Bria was at the heart and center of this project. And I like to just draw attention to it, because I think that there is this narrative that women don't like to work together or struggle to work together. And I want to counterbalance that narrative, because working with her was such a pleasure, and it was truly like, there's no ego, and I think because we had a mutual respect for each other going into this collaboration, and that respect and friendship only grew as we were working together. But it was because we were able to, right, like that kind of peacocking comes from insecurity, right? Like, you're not confident in yourself. You're intimidated by the situation. You're intimidated by somebody else. And so I think because we created safe space for each other and supportive space for each other, and always having respectful conversation and saying, hey, do you want to be a part of this conversation? Do you want to talk this out? Making space for each other in that way. It was such a truly an effortless, pleasurable experience working with Bria. And I know that, she says the same. And we're developing more stuff together now. And I just want to, I just wanted to say that, because I think it's important, because there is a narrative out there that's bullshit. And this is the truth, is that women work together really well.
I
love that.
Yeah.
Yes. I see it a lot. I see women who succeed and then like slam the door, and it's, no, I made it through. You need to make it through. And I've never understood that. So when I see stuff like you're talking about right now, I just adore it, because I'm a big believer that if we can learn from each other's mistakes, we can all do things faster and more efficiently. So why would we ever slam the door on each other, let alone somebody who needs that extra push because of the way that things are set up?
It's fear. So. Fear dominates, most human behaviors.
Absolutely.
And I think the challenge is to create a space where fear is not invited in the room. It's like, I already said I'm a big sci-fi nerd, and I have, this fucking printed on my desk in big letters, fear is the mind killer. It's like, don't let it pass through you, baby. It's not welcome here. It's not part of the conversation. We will acknowledge that the demon is here and then let him go, and he's not going to bother you. And it's very liberating, I think, to inhabit that space. And I think that women are able to do it. Everybody's able to do it. This movie, I think, was just a really special example of how a collaboration without ego, without trying to one up each other, any of this weirdness that can come up sometimes. It was just totally absent. And I really credit Bria as the one who birthed this script in the first place, being so welcoming to bringing me and my team onto the project, right? And really genuinely enjoying each other's conversations and the creativity that came out of it. I think that's really the space that I want to continue working in with all projects. So it was a very, that I think is a big takeaway from that experience.
Absolutely.
I'm excited to hear you guys are doing more stuff together.
Same.
So that's fantastic.
Yeah, we have some cool stuff cooking on the stove.
Well, when it's ready, if you want to come back and talk about it, you are more than welcome.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. So I think that about wraps it up. So I want to bring it back to you. Do you have anything else that you want to tell people about, or?
No, just go watch Lucky. Enjoy it. Have conversations in person, hopefully safely. Get vaccinated. And then have a conversation. If you're inside, wear a mask. But I think just check out the film, and I guess there's some new stuff coming down the line. I guess one thing I can talk about since it's been announced is I am adapting a short story by Joe Hill that I'm very excited about. So that's with a great group of producers, and just some really good stuff that is in the genre space, but I think all of these projects are sort of doing something interesting with the genre and always trying to find where subgenres intersect, or where we can bring interesting characters, or just a way of looking at genre in a way that we haven't before. So that's really, for me, always the number one thing that I'm trying to do with all my projects. So hopefully that continues to be the case.
I love
That's
it.
Exciting.
Yeah.
So Laurel, what was your face when you just heard Joe Hill? Were you like, oh, James just exploded over there. He's the happiest person ever.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you were going to be able to talk anymore. I'm glad you recovered that.
Yeah,
Hill wrote Lock and Key, which is my favorite story of all time. So he's a god to me.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, he's very supportive. It's from his collection, early short stories collection. It's a short story called Abraham's Boys, which is dealing with some characters in the following the events of Dracula. So it's a lot of fun. I think it's a really cool project. So I'm excited about it for sure. Yeah.
I actually got booed at a panel at a convention once because I jokingly said the best thing Stephen King ever made was Joe Hill. And the whole room booed me. It was such a great moment.
That's so funny. I had a weird entry to Stephen King. Actually, some of the first stuff that I ever read was actually the Dark Tower series, because my friends were super into fantasy. And I were, we grew up on Lord of the Rings and stuff. And so I actually came to him through Dark Tower, which was sort of an unusual. I think most people, they read one of his other pieces. That's a whole nother podcast about Stephen King. But no, I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be working with the material. It's going to be great.
Awesome. All right. So I would just want to thank you one more time for doing this and taking time out of your very busy schedule to be here. It means a lot. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you guys for supporting the film. And you're so thoughtful, and really a dream to be able to share the project with. So yeah, thanks so much for your thoughtful feedback. I loved it.
Thank you very much for inviting me on, James, and thank you for talking to us. Natasha, had a great time.
You bet.
Hey, Laurel, one more thing before we go. Would you like to plug We Are Wolves while we're here? I feel like it really ties in.
Well, yeah, that does. It is. So if anybody hasn't picked it up, it is a charity anthology entitled "We Are Wolves" that I edited with Gemma Amore and Sina Paleo, and it is all women authors and writing horror
Ooh.
stories dealing with the reality of being a woman. And it's the thing that I'm still the most proud of having done. I'm very proud of all of our authors, and it's something you can grab. And I think it's only going to be in print till the end of the year, if people haven't grabbed that yet. But all of the proceeds for sales of that are donated to various charities that mostly deal with helping survivors of sexual abuse.
Amazing. I'm going to check that out. I'm so happy to know about that. Sounds
Oh yeah,
amazing.
I'm very proud of it. We had some just great authors contribute.
Yeah, beautiful.
Excellent. All right. So I suppose that wraps it up for another week. So as always, I am James Sabata, and we will see you back here at thenacronama.com.